Hi there. I'm Mark Borelli, and I'm a business coach that helps companies scale, grow profitably, and even increase their profitability as they do. But today I want to talk to you about cash flow and improving your cash flow. Cash flow, as I'm sure many of you know, is crucial. It is the lifeblood of the organization. Without it, the company cannot survive. Companies don't go broke because they make losses. Companies go broke because they run out of cash. And companies get affected by cash flow for all sorts of situations. First, they can lose revenue, like many companies experienced when COVID hit. And without the PPP or other loan programs, they would not have survived. So there was one way of losing cash. But there's also the situation in an existing business where nothing much is changing. Your customers, if you have large clients, suddenly decide to extend their payment requirements. And they're not going to pay you in 60 days, they're going to pay you in 90 days. That affects your cash flow. Can you survive that? Finally, the one that really affects many companies is when they hit periods of huge growth. And I know many companies are hitting them right now. This pent-up demand from COVID is just releasing huge orders everywhere when people are scrambling. But when you're growing very fast, you tend to, if your cash flow cycle and your cash flow generation is not right, you will consume far more cash than you'll produce. And that could lead you to bankruptcy. I've known this happen to two companies that were incredibly successful, but just ran out of cash and had to shut the door. So again, what I want to do today is talk about cash flow and the three things that cause companies not to maximize the cash flow they're getting. I hope you'll come along and find out what I've got to say. And let me just share my screen with you. So we're talking about 3 steps to improving cash flow. Our goal is we want to improve cash flow. It's pretty simple. So what are the 3 steps? Well, there's first, most people don't know what to focus on. They're focused on the wrong things, or they're just not focused at all. So if I ask most clients or entrepreneurs, what do you focus on to increase cash flow? I get 3 answers: increase revenue, cut cost of goods sold, or cut overhead. The problem is they will tell me is cost of goods sold is difficult to cut, and overhead, they're not sure they can always cut it, but if they do, it's limiting the future growth of their business. But what I find interesting in that answer is they don't know which of those has the biggest effect. And there may be other ways to increase cash flow without cutting those, or with growing other things, or just changing things. So understanding the drivers of your cash flow that will give you the biggest results is key. The second issue that I find with most companies when they're trying to grow and get more cash is they don't actually know what or who meets their minimum profitability requirement. What do I mean by this? Well, they don't know. If they look across their business, and I was to say to them or say to you, what is the minimum profitability you expect from a customer, a product, or a service? Most people tell me it's X%. X varies between companies. But let's just say, for hypothetical reasons right now, our X% is 25%. So we're expecting to sell all our products and services at a 25% margin. And all our customers are paying us such that we get a 25% margin. But when we look at our financials, that's often not the case. And the question is, why are we not getting that? So we have to know who or what meets our minimum profitability. The next issue is the cash flow cycle is just too long. The cash flow cycle is the time it takes from when you first meet a prospect until the cash ends up in your bank account. Now, for many companies, that just takes too long. It could be, in some cases, 200 to 300 days. And what we want to do is get that number lower, because the lower that number is, the quicker we get the cash and we turn it. So these are the 3 biggest problems. So what are the solutions? Well, naturally, to 3 problems, we need 3 solutions. So what we're going to do, first thing we got to do is know what to focus on with regard to getting more cash out. And knowing what to focus on is key. It's a bit like the story of the man on his hands and knees underneath the lamplight in the street looking for his car keys. And somebody says to him, "Did you drop the keys here?" And he said, "No, but the light's better here." Because we don't know where to look, we're often looking at the wrong things and in the wrong place. So we need to know what will get us the biggest bang for the buck if we were to change it in our organization to get more cash. The second thing is we need to ensure that all our clients, products, and services meet our minimum profitability threshold, whatever that may be. But that threshold has to be enough to cover the overhead and generate the return you require in your business. So we have to look at that. And then third, we need to get the cash flow cycle that is good. Now, I don't like the word good, but the issue here is improving your cash flow cycle is kind of a continuous process. As you might be able to see on my screen, my company is called Kaizen, a Japanese word for continuous improvement. What I've found with most companies on cash flow, it is a continuous improvement. They shorten it, and they shorten their cycle over time. And over time, they find new ways to shorten it. It's not something you do once and forget about. It's a continuous cycle. So that's why I've used the term good. But our goal here is to just identify ways to shorten it for you, and you can work on it later. So what are the steps they're going to get us here and give us these 3 solutions? Well, there's 6. So going back to know what to focus on, we're going to start with the first one. We've got to identify the biggest drivers of cash flow in the business. And to do that, we're going to look at 7 drivers. The first is price. The second is volume. Now combined, they make revenue, but we need to break it down because sometimes volume will generate more cash flow for a change than price will. And we need to know which one of those 2 to focus on. The next thing we're going to look at is cost of goods sold. Then we look at overhead. And after that, we go to accounts payable, accounts receivable, and inventory, and look what changes in all those variables will do to price and to cash flow and profit. So we know which ones to focus on to get the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. And if we can't change one thing, we then go to the next. But at least we know what the impact is, and we're focused on the right things and not the wrong things. And by focusing on the right things, we can get more cash out of your business as it is today. Not that you have to double your revenue, but just get more cash out of the business as it is today. And that's our goal, improve your cash flow. Next, with regard to clients, products, and services to meet minimum profitability, the first thing we have to do is identify the profitability of each. Now, unfortunately, this is finance and numbers. And so in the immortal words of Peter Drucker, we measure what matters. And so I'm afraid all of these require measurement. Here, we have to look at what is the profitability of each product, customer, or service. Now, if you're in a business where you sell thousands of SKUs, then it may be hard to go through them all. But there's usually a bunch of them that you can look at. So what do 80% account for? And are they meeting that threshold? And of all your SKUs, you should be able to tell which are not and which are, and probably see how you can improve. It's easier if you're in the services business because you probably don't have as many customers. And so you can quickly see who is meeting that threshold. But even for both of those, it's worth looking at. You know, there's the old saying, what I lose on the unit, I'm going to make up in volume. It doesn't work. Nobody's ever succeeded at that game, no matter how hard they've tried. So we need to make sure everybody is at the threshold we want. Now, once we've done that, we can then take steps to get them there. Now, here some of you will say to me, well, that's great, but we sell this product as a loss leader, or we sell this product because it's an ancillary product to our main product or service, and therefore we don't care that it doesn't make our profitability requirement. And that is fine. That is a strategic decision, and I'm not going to argue with you on it. But here's my question. If it is a loss leader, are you getting enough business from that loss leader at a profit margin such that the combination of the two are generating the profitability you want? Or if it's an ancillary product, the same test applies. Are you selling enough of those and your main product that overall, if you combine the two, you get the margin you need? And that's how you got to look at it. With customers, you got to look at, and this is what I find interesting in services businesses, they often are truly underestimating the cost of delivering the service. And so while they've put out an estimate or a proposal at a certain cost, it's costing them more to deliver it, so their profitability is down. And often that work may be rework, or just the customer has a lot of changes. And so I think one of the key things here is to look at it and say, am I getting enough out of that customer, and do I have to change it? But the idea here is to work with all of these and make sure they get to a point where they're generating the minimum profitability that you want in your business. And that will then cover your overhead and give you the returns you want. Next, we get to the cash flow cycle. Again, we got to measure it. Now, there are 4 parts to the cash flow cycle. The first is what we call the sales cycle. That's the amount of time it takes from when you first interact with a potential customer or client till the time they sign a contract, give you a purchase order, or swipe or pay you for the product through whatever store you're using. The second is what we call the inventory make or production cycle. So if there's somebody who walks into your store, whether it's an online store or an old-fashioned retail store, and they buy a product, there's a very short sales cycle, but there may be a long inventory time. Also, if you're manufacturing things, you've got the inventory and the manufacturing time that you need to take into account. If you're producing something, again, it's time if you're producing software or other products. The next cycle we look at is the delivery cycle. This applies a lot to service businesses. How long does it take to deliver the service you're selling? From the time you start till you finish, and that includes rework and change orders and all that sort of stuff. And then lastly, the billing cycle. How long does it take from the time you deliver the product or service to the time you collect payment? So for some people, they get paid the minute the person purchases it, like in an online store, retail store, which is great. They have a very short sales billing cycle. They can't improve it. But for those of you outside of that, it may be much more of a serious consequence, especially if you're doing business with very large companies who tend to hang out their suppliers and pay them very late, like 90 to 120 days. So you got to know your cash flow cycle. So we got to measure all these 4 variables and then see what is the best way of shortening it, because we got to shorten it and get it down. So that is really what it's about. We've got these 3 problems. We don't know what to focus on. We don't know whether our products, services, or clients are meeting our minimum profitability thresholds, and our cash cycle is too long. And by going through the 6 steps laid out here, we seek to shorten it. So if you really want to improve cash flow, and you think that this program looks interesting that we're putting together, then please just send me a message that says cash flow, and I'll send you more information on it. We're starting the program shortly. It's going to run through these 6 segments, and it's going to leave you with an action plan with details on how to get more cash out of your business going through these 6 areas. So like I say, just send me the word cash flow, and I will send you some information on the program. It's going to cover the deliverables, the cost, and the dates, and it'll just be a simple Word document. I hope you think cash flow is important enough so that you will get involved. We'd love to have you join us on this program and improve your cash flow so that no matter where your business is today, it can only get better and improve more. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you'll join us on the program. Thank you so much.